Hi guys, so hopefully you've had some time to play around with Adobe Flash and get used to some of the different features of the software. Here of course we have the stage. This is scene 1 of our movie, and scene 1 of course will need some different layers with different characters and actors and things that are going to be in the scene, and each layer of course is going to have associated frames. So at the beginning of the movie we're going to see things on frame 1, and then later in the movie maybe things are going to be introduced on frame 40 or frame 65 or whatever. We'll be looking at that later in the course. Today we're going to review some of the drawing tools that are available for us and how to color shapes that we make on the stage and how to create a simple animated character. Okay, so this is a nice way to start, I think, in Flash. In your movie, think about a character that's going to be at the start of the movie. And in layer 1, let's make a layer for that character. I'm going to make a crying man, because my movie is about a man who is very sad. So I've got my crying man layer here. What I'm going to do now is go to the shape icon, just click and drag, and I'm going to find the oval tool. And I'm just going to start by drawing a very simple, don't worry about the size, head of a man. Now in my version of Flash, for some reason I keep getting this bounding box around the shape that I make, and I don't want it. So what I'm going to do is break apart the shape, and that's what I want to see. So when I select the shape, I want to see these little white dots everywhere. Remember that a shape has a fill color, which is blue, and a border line, which is black. And I can mess around with both of those things. I can say to this border line, which is black, I want you to be thicker. Okay? So you can mess around with shapes and their border line. Of course, if you don't want the border line, and there may be times when you don't want it, just click on it and hit delete on your keyboard, and the border line will disappear. You can also play with the shape of shapes by going to the edge of the shape, clicking and just dragging, and you can kind of change the shape of the shape. Okay? Control Z, Control Z. You can also go to the edge of a shape, press Control on the keyboard, and then click and drag, and you get a sharp edge that's created. Okay? And you can end up kind of making a heart shape. Something like that. Anyway, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. Okay, this is a shape on my crying man layer, and I'm going to turn this into a crying man animation. So I'm going to convert this to a symbol called crying man. Brilliant. A lovely light blue bounding box. This is different from the one we saw before, and this means the symbol is now inside our library, and there it is. It's now a library symbol. To get into that, so I can edit it, just double click. We are now inside Crying Man. Okay? So I'm now going to start developing this character. Inside Crying Man symbol, I'm going to make layer 1 equal head, and let's just design the head. Now I want it to look like the crying man. Let's just make this a bit smaller. It's a little bit too big. I want it to look like the crying man has got his head down on a table. So I'm just going to try and think about what that would look like as a shape. So the head's probably going to look something kind of like that. Okay, I'm satisfied. Nose. Let's make a nose layer. Everything on a different layer, guys. It gives you power. The nose, I'm going to use the brush tool. I'm going to make it black. And I'm going to make it a big brush size. And just plump a nose right there. There we have a nose. Let's just zoom in on that. You can see that it's bounded by that box again. If that's happening to you, you might just want to break apart again. It's up to you. If you're going to mess around with the shape of the nose. For example, we could have Pinocchio. Just make that nose a little bit bigger. Okay, So there's the nose. I don't like the shape of that at all. I'm going to do Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. That's better. I like that nose. Now then, let's think about the next part of this character. I'm going to do arm. Now, is this going to be the right arm or the left arm? I'm not sure yet. We'll get to that in a moment. Now I'm going to start locking layers so I don't get confused. And I'm going to work on the arm layer. Just to unlock it. Now we can start working on it. So maybe he's wearing a red shirt. Just going to make a smaller brush size. I'm going to start drawing what I think is an arm. So it kind of comes out here and it comes around and it kind of goes onto the top of his head. You'll see why in a moment. I'm just going to come around here. Just try to make it look like that's his shoulder. So that's the shoulder, and it comes around to the top of his head. I'm just going to break apart all these. That's frustrating me a little bit. Okay, and let's see if I can fill this shape with some colour. A red paint bucket. Yes, I can. Brilliant. So there's an arm. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Have a look at this area here. Just going to drag that kind of nearer the head. You can really zoom in and get right into the detail. Let's just zoom out. Yeah, that doesn't look bad. That looks like the arm that is kind of coming from behind the shoulder there, behind the head and out. So that's the arm. And let's now look at hand. Now the hand is going to be, let's choose a kind of a skin colour. It's going to be pink. Let's just test the brush. Yeah, that's okay. Control Z. So I'm going to take the hand and I'm going to try and draw a hand shape. It's not easy to draw with a mouse, but that's all I've got. So that's what I'm going to use. So there's a hand. Again, I'm going to break it apart and I'm going to try and fill it with that pink colour. Brilliant. The hand really needs to be behind the sleeve. So I'm going to put the hand under the arm. There we go. Brilliant. Now, what we could do, of course, on this layer is say we need to make the other arm and the other hand. Now, if they're the same, on the arm layer, why don't we just make two arms? So I'm going to select that arm, copy it, paste it, and use the free transform tool to flip it. Move it into place as best I can, something like that. Maybe just zoom in again and just take that in a little bit. Maybe bring that out a little bit. Don't want to see any white. Just take that out a little bit. It's fiddly, but it's worth it to make your animation look good. Let's just zoom out again. Okay. And so that's the arm. The arm layer now has two arms on it. Let's go to the hand. We'll do the same thing. Control C, Control V, flip it around, just rotate it and move it into position. Something like that. Let's just zoom in. It'd be a bit easier to mess around with it. Brilliant. So now we've got a guy who's looks like he's on, his head is on the table, he's looking sad. Let's turn our attention to the head. I'm going to lock those layers. Let's go to the head. Unlock it. There it is. Let's make it pink. But maybe a slightly different pink to the hands so that we can see the hands. Let's just move this down. Did you see the color changes? So let's just make him a slightly darker pink. And now let's make another layer called hair. Lock everything else. The hair, I'm going to give him some black hair. And I'm going to use the paintbrush tool and just draw some kind of... And that's good because we cover that shoulder area anyway. So I don't have to worry so much about the accuracy of covering the shoulder. Brilliant. I'm going to break it apart because I have to, you might not have to, and I'm going to fill it. Now, if we look closely, it's behind this shoulder. So I'm going to take the hair layer, put it above the arm, but not above the hand. This is tricky. Let's put the hand above the hair. Just reorganize the layers. That's what I want it to look like. Brilliant! Now I want the hand to look like it's kind of he's constantly shaking the hand like he's rubbing his hair. He's feeling very frustrated. So I'm going to go to the hand layer and I'm going to create a little movie symbol called hand. And let's go inside hands. So it's not easy to see because of the color I chose, but we're now inside the hand layer. What I'm going to do is, in the first frame they look like that, and then in the fourth frame or fifth frame I'm going to press F6 and I'm just going to rotate this hand. Then I'm going to do another F6 and I'm just going to rotate this hand, and then I'm going to do another F6 over here, and I'm just going to mess around with just kind of rotating the hands occasionally to make it look like he's kind of rubbing his hair. And I'll do it a couple more times. F6. Okay, so when we go back to Crying Man, just zoom out. Hopefully we will see him. Okay, let's go back to scene 1 and play the movie. Control, test movie, or Control Enter. So that's what we've got at the moment. A man who's face down on the table, looking a little bit frustrated with life. Okay? And I put the hair in the wrong place. The hair should be above the arm. That's wrong. So I'll have to fix that. So let's go back into Crying Man. What's wrong with the hair layer? Hair should be above the arm. And so should the hand. So let's put the arm beneath those. That's better. That's what I want to see. Okay. Now I'm going to make a new layer called Tear. And using my oval tool, I'm going to make a blue tear with no stroke. Just going to make a big one here to design it. Break that apart. And mess with the shape. I'm going to use that control key trick. Control and click. Brilliant! I've got a tear. It's obviously too big, but I've designed it. Now I'm going to make it small. Put it into place. If I can, I need to zoom in a little bit here, just to go and put it into place. I want it to be there, kind of there. And now I'm going to animate it. This is just going to be repeating animation. So I'm going to make it into a symbol. Call it tear. Do OK. Go into tear, and let's start to animate it. So in tear, it starts in this position, and then I'm going to do an F6 and just move it down a little bit, and then do another F6 and move it down a little bit, and do another F6 and move it down a little bit, and do another F6 and move it down a little bit, and then it kind of, imagine it's hitting the table, so it kind of turns a little bit, F6, and it just turns, F6, and it just turns, and then it bounces. F6, it starts moving up and away, and maybe it starts getting bigger as well, because it's kind of moving towards us, or something like that. F6, move it up, and finally, final thing is, it's not a tear anymore, so I'm going to delete that. It's a bunch of strokes. It kind of explodes. Pew, 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 pew. And then F6, maybe they get a bit smaller and finally disappear. Maybe they've kind of moved up there. F6 and disappear. So let's go back to scene 1 and Control Enter our movie. So take some time, guys, and see if you can build a movie that has one layer called Crying Man, and it contains a movie clip. When we go inside it, we've developed a movie with a whole